Let's get into the conversation right now with Chris Smith, my colleague here at Sky News, and of course 2GB. Lovely to see him as always. And Nicholas Reece, the Deputy Lord Mayor of Melbourne, and also my mate here at Sky News. So, Labor's given up on power prices. What about that? We're 2 weeks in, and the Resources Minister says, nothing to see. We can't do anything here, Chris.
Yeah, well, this is what happens when you have a black and white view of where you're getting your power from. The black and white view was no more coal, no more gas. They wanted to follow their mates, the Greens, in saying that. And so all we want to do is build windmills and solar panels and we'll get through. But no one's come up. No one has produced a scientific paper that says that we can have that transition at that particular point in time without the lights going off. And look what's happened. And I've got this sick view of this whole situation. I'd like to see the lights go out. I'd actually like to see now what we're probably facing, which is we either pay skyrocketing prices, the government goes in and bails everyone out by giving out socialist payments to everyone so the rich can pay for their power bills. The place goes to, the industry falls over, manufacturing falls over, so we learn a lesson. It might be great to transition into green power, but you've got to have a plan to be able to practically do that. There's no plan. No one's got the plan. We'll just transition and it'll work out, whether we've got battery power or not. I hate this, but this is what happens because we took the black and white view of it all.
Well, but also, Nicholas, we know what the transition is, and the conversation that I've been having with you on this show for the best part of a decade is about, let's be honest, about the cost of transition. Supply and cost of existing supply is the cost of transition. This is the 10-year bit nobody wanted to talk about that we're starting to live this winter.
Yep, and Paul, you and I have always agreed that gas would be a big part of that transition, and yet here we are. We are the world's biggest exporter of LNG gas, more than the Middle East, more than the USA, more than Canada, and yet over recent weeks we've seen the price of energy quadruple. And it's obvious what's happened here. We're paying the price of 9 years of failure on energy policy in this country. We haven't seen proper price mechanisms put in place. We haven't seen the investment going into renewables that we need. And instead, we've seen our fleet of coal-fired power stations, about 24 of them, they've become run down, they're offline.
Well, why didn't we invest in making sure that they were still working, Nicholas? Why didn't we invest in making sure that they were still working so we can get our baseload power?
That's a very good question, Chris. I mean, we've had 9 years of failed energy policy under the coalition where the investment that needed to be made in our energy system has not occurred. Now, Labor didn't create this problem, but they will also be judged on how they go about fixing it. And I do think they need to look at this energy trigger mechanism and not waiting till January next year, but seeing if they can do something to bring that forward. They have a mechanism like that in Western Australia. They're paying $5 a gigajoule for power there. In the eastern states, we're paying 8 times that. So there are mechanisms out there which have been shown to work in some jurisdictions. I think they should be looking at that at a national level as well.
But also, Nick, the reality of how much money goes into the renewable market, these are now private companies, and I'm very happy to say that anyone who advocated for the mass privatisation of these things, well, look what's happening right now. But it's the state energy authorities, and most states have had 50-50 renewable energy targets in place for much of the past 9 years. They are the ones that are openly supporting more wind farms, more solar. In Victoria, they're closing down things like coal-fired power stations. They've got about 25% of the market, actually 40%, sorry, on some days that are renewable. So the actual levels of government that actually build this stuff have never been standing in the way of it. It's a bit of a convenient fallacy where we've deliberately mucked up, and I think that this starts with Turnbull and goes all the way to today, about trying to pretend the federal government is involved in the energy mix. It is the state governments and the private companies at the state levels that have decided to build or not build.
I think it's a bit more complicated than that. I mean, everybody knows we're transitioning away we're transitioning towards renewables, and the banks have just stopped investing in coal-fired power because they know it doesn't have a long-term future.
That didn't happen last week.
So the power stations have been allowed to run down over a decade, and we haven't had the amount of investment that was needed in new forms of energy taking place.
But the private sector
now,
can do that.
as the tide goes out, we're being caught with our pants down as a nation, and prices are going up like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, but also, what about what I said too about local councils before? There's a local council in Melbourne that turns around and tells a bloke, "Oh, take the solar panels off your heritage home." Now, local council has led the way with the emergency declarations on climate change. Yet again, to my knowledge, in the city of Sydney, you're not allowed to have solar panels on the side of your house that faces the street because of the street appeal. You don't have any of these people saying, "Oh, we're going to shut down the local community-owned golf course and turn it into a solar farm." Instead, we're going to put it all out in Airbnb country and hopefully, bugger the farmers of Ballarat.
You made a really good point in part of that editorial earlier, Paul, about that. Why is it the Bush have to cop the worst end of this particular quotient? Why do they have to carry the responsibility, carry the negative impacts of clearing forest land and putting in wind turbines? I had someone on my show last night who showed me a picture of their national park in just outside of Cairns that was smothered by trucks and sand and wrecked so they could make way for wind turbines. Well, where are the local councils saying, hang on a minute, we're cutting our nose off to spite our face here. This isn't what we were meant to do.